Do you have your own favorite disturbing movie with an extra layer of meaning? Take The Lighthouse, for example. Even after 3 watches, I'm still not sure I fully understand it. There's something incredibly satisfying about realizing a movie has a second layer that many people completely missed, or discovering a fan theory that suddenly makes you see the entire film differently. Like the idea that Marla in Fight Club might be just another personality of the narrator. Today on Top Today, we're talking about 10 disturbing movies with hidden meanings you might have missed. If you're ready, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's start with number 10. Number 10, Enemy, 2013. Have you ever finished a movie and immediately searched online for an explanation? If so, there's a good chance Enemy was one of them. Directed by Denis Villeneuve and based on José Saramago's novel The Double, the film follows Adam, a lonely history professor played by Jake Gyllenhaal. One day, while watching a random movie, he notices an actor who looks exactly like him. Identical man with same face and same voice. Shocked by his discovery, he decides to find this mysterious stranger. At first, it seems like an impossible coincidence, but the more Adam learns about his double, the stranger everything around him becomes. Their lives begin to intertwine in unexpected ways, and what starts as simple curiosity slowly turns into fear and obsession. If you haven't seen the film, you're probably thinking, what the hell kind of plot description is that? But trust me, that's honestly all you need to know to fully enjoy the movie and spend hours afterward trying to figure out what the director was actually trying to say and what the whole story really meant. Enemy is a slow burn yet intriguing look into the psyche of Jake Gyllenhaal's character. The film is filled with subtle symbolism and metaphors which really expand the story into being a lot more complex than what it may initially seem. The cinematography, framing, and editing are all incredibly precise. Almost every scene feels like it contains some small visual clue pointing toward what is really happening beneath the surface. Denis Villeneuve is an amazing director who gave us films like Sicario, Dune, and Incendie, which we've already talked about on this channel. But Enemy feels like his version of what Memento was for Christopher Nolan, a smaller psychological thriller with unconventional storytelling that earned critical praise and helped lead to much bigger projects. If you already watched the movie, let me know what was your feelings at the end of the story in the comments below. Number 9. Possum, 2018. Can trauma ever truly be left behind? Or does it follow us for the rest of our lives, no matter how far we run? Directed by Matthew Holness, Possum is one of the most psychologically disturbing, and at the same time one of the strangest, films you'll ever see. There's very little dialogue and almost no jump scares, except for one near the end that I genuinely consider one of the best jump scares ever put on film. Yet despite that, the movie creates an overwhelming sense of dread from beginning to end. If you've seen Spider starring Ralph Fiennes, this film will probably remind you of it visually, even though the two movies explore somewhat different themes. The story follows Philip, a disgraced puppeteer who returns to his childhood home after many years away. Forced to confront both his past and his abusive stepfather, he carries with him a grotesque spider-like puppet named Possum, a puppet he repeatedly tries to get rid of, only for it to somehow keep finding its way back. Without spoiling the story, it's important to understand that almost nothing in Possum should be taken literally. Even the abandoned house, the empty landscapes, and the constant silence seem to reflect Philip's fractured state of mind. Reality and memory slowly begin to blur, making it increasingly difficult to tell where one ends and the other begins. The puppet itself means something entirely different, a truth that's only revealed near the end of the film. Possum isn't disturbing because of graphic violence. It's disturbing because it captures what living with unresolved trauma might actually feel like. The film never explains everything directly, leaving the audience to piece together its meaning for themselves. It's slow, deeply uncomfortable, and certainly not for everyone. But if you're willing to be patient, Possum becomes one of the most haunting psychological horror films you'll ever experience. Number 8. Mother, 2017. After watching Pi, a film by Darren Aronofsky that we talked about earlier, I started seeing him as a completely different kind of director. It also made me want to explore the rest of his filmography. Of course, most people know Aronofsky for movies like Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan, But today we're talking about Mother, a film absolutely packed with symbolism and hidden meanings that many viewers completely miss. The problem is that if you don't understand what Aronofsky is trying to do, the film can easily come across as nothing more than pretentious nonsense with no meaning behind it. So, small spoilers are possible here because I have no idea how to tell you about this film without explaining its meaning. The story follows a young woman living with her husband, a famous poet, in a large, isolated house. Their peaceful life is suddenly interrupted when a stranger arrives at their door. Before long, more unexpected guests begin showing up, and with each new arrival, the situation becomes stranger, more chaotic, and increasingly disturbing. That is a basic plot we can talk about, and if you want to watch this movie without any spoilers at all, you better skip this part to the number 7, because now we will talk about hidden meanings of this film, which are important to understand if you actually want to understand the movie Aronofsky made. One detail I absolutely love is that throughout the credits, almost every character is written in lowercase. The only exception is Javier Bardem's character, who is simply credited as him. It's a small detail, but one that perfectly reflects what the movie is really about. Almost every major character represents someone or something else. Jennifer Lawrence is Mother Nature. Javier Bardem represents God, a creator who constantly seeks admiration and devotion. Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer symbolize Adam and Eve, while their two sons represent Cain and Abel. As the story progresses, the house itself becomes a symbol of our planet, and the growing chaos inside mirrors humanity's relationship with the Earth. At the same time, the film can also be interpreted as a metaphor for the relationship between an artist and his audience, showing how the endless desire for recognition can consume everything around it. That's what makes Mother so fascinating. Beneath its disturbing surface lies a movie that almost feels like one giant metaphor, where nearly every character, object, and event carries a deeper meaning. The film received very mixed reviews from both critics and audiences. It's controversial and definitely not for everyone. Also, it's worth mentioning that the film contains several disturbing scenes that may affect some viewers, especially the baby scene and the toilet scene. Because of those scenes alone, this film takes the number 7 spot on today's list. Number 7, Under the Skin, 2013. What does it actually mean to be human? It's a question that countless philosophers have tried to answer throughout history, from Friedrich Nietzsche to Jean-Paul Sartre. And in 2013, Jonathan Glazer offered one of the most unusual cinematic answers to that question. Under the Skin raises fascinating questions about what it truly means to be human and the place of women in society. All of this is cleverly disguised as science fiction, which ultimately serves as little more than a backdrop for the story the film is actually trying to tell. The film contains several quite disturbing scenes and also makes most people wonder what they have just watched. That's exactly why Under the Skin absolutely belonged to this list. I'll do my best to explain the story without spoilers, so its true meaning won't be revealed in this short review. You'll have to discover that part for yourself. The film follows a mysterious woman wandering through the streets of Scotland. Her behavior feels more like she's studying humans than actually living among them. Driving across the country in an old van, she chooses attractive and lonely men for reasons that aren't immediately clear to the viewer. But her nature and behavior begin to change when she meets someone who isn't beautiful on the outside, but the inside. As she starts to realize that a person is something more than just skin and memories, she begins to accept her own identity and becomes increasingly alive and real. As she changes, her life begins to change as well, leading us toward a tragic and confusing ending. To avoid revealing what exactly happens in the film, I'll only give you one hint. Under the Skin explores humanity through the eyes of someone who was never human to begin with. The more human Scarlett Johansson's character becomes, the faster the roles of hunter and prey begin to reverse. This film is definitely not for everyone, and I'm sure many people simply didn't understand it, which is probably one of the reasons why it doesn't have the highest audience rating. Despite slowing down a little in the middle, Under the Skin raises fascinating questions without ever giving the audience a clear answer. Instead, it encourages you to think, interpret, and search for the film's true meaning on your own. A well-deserved number 7. Number 6. Dumplings, 2004. How far would you go for youth and beauty? Would you commit immoral acts to get what you want? And are you even sure your desire to stay young and attractive is truly your own, or was it imposed on you by society? Long before the substance, 2024, became a worldwide phenomenon, Dumplings explored these very same questions, and many more. While its themes also touch on Hong Kong's relationship with mainland China, it's hard not to notice just how much the substance seems to have been inspired by Fruit Chan's film. The story follows Mrs. Lee, a wealthy former actress desperate to reclaim her youth and win back her unfaithful husband. She turns to May, a mysterious former gynecologist from mainland China who prepares special dumplings made with highly unusual ingredients. They promise rejuvenation, but at a horrifying moral cost. On the surface, the film tells the story of a woman so obsessed with youth and beauty that she's willing to cross every moral boundary to achieve them. What exactly goes into the dumplings? That's one mystery I won't spoil here. So what makes dumplings truly disturbing? It's the context, the secret ingredient, the meticulous preparation, and several unforgettable scenes that are guaranteed to stay with you long after the credits roll. But beneath the horror lies a much deeper social commentary. The film explores how youth and beauty become commodities, how women are judged by their appearance, and how capitalism turns even human into products. Many critics also interpret the relationship between Hong Kong and mainland China through the film's central metaphor. The raw material comes from the mainland, is transformed in Hong Kong, and ultimately consumed by the wealthy elite. Mrs. Lee, despite all her wealth, is trapped in a marriage where her appearance has become her only value. May, on the other hand, is financially independent, yet remains vulnerable in an entirely different way. Behind its shocking premise, Dumplings offers a surprisingly thoughtful critique of beauty, exploitation, class, and consumerism. It's disturbing, thought-provoking, and one of the most unforgettable films on today's list. Number 5. Kill List, 2011. Released in 2011, Kill List has become a cult classic among fans of disturbing cinema. What begins as a grounded crime drama slowly transforms into a modern folk horror masterpiece. But beneath the surface lies an even deeper layer of symbolism and hidden meaning, some of which may not have even been intentional, yet has been passionately debated by fans for years. Directed by Ben Wheatley, the story follows Jay, a former soldier and ex-hitman whose marriage is falling apart. One day, desperate for money, he accepts what seems like just another contract alongside his best friend and partner, Gal. Their job is simple: eliminate 3 targets. But, from the very beginning, something about the assignment feels strange and deeply unsettling. Their employer insists on sealing the contract with blood, and the victims behave in disturbing ways. The first target, for example, actually thanks Jay before being killed. At the beginning, neither of them pays much attention to these bizarre details. But as the story unfolds, they slowly realize they become part of something much older, much darker, and far more terrifying than they ever imagined. It's also worth mentioning that Kill List has one of the most brutal endings you'll ever see. Yet beneath all the violence and brutality lies another layer of meaning that's surprisingly easy to miss. I don't want to spoil the story, but to explain the kind of symbolism I'm talking about, I have to lift the curtain just a little. My interpretations of this film is that the cult isn't just a creepy secret society. Instead, it represents power itself, and what people are willing to sacrifice in order to climb its hierarchy. Throughout the movie, Jay keeps following orders without fully understanding who is giving them or why. That's hardly a coincidence. Before becoming a hitman, he was a soldier, a man trained to obey commands without asking questions. Even his partner Gal, who introduces him to the job, can be seen as the person slowly leading him deeper into the cult's world. The ritual at the beginning, where the contract is signed in blood, already suggests that Jay crossed a line long before he realized what was really happening. Every assignment brings him one step closer to the top of the hierarchy, but every promotion comes at a terrible cost he needs to pay. At the end, you can see that he actually received a promotion. Whether Ben Wheatley intended all of this is impossible to say. Even years later, fans are still debating whether the cult represents fate, blind obedience, political power, or simply humanity's endless willingness to sacrifice others in exchange for status. I know I probably didn't do the best job explaining my theory, but to really do it justice, I'd need an entire video dedicated to Kill List. Maybe we'll revisit it in the future. For now, let's move on to number 4. Number 4. Dogtooth, 2009. The first time I watched Dogtooth, I only had a vague idea of what was actually going on. The second viewing made things much clearer, but I didn't fully understand the bigger picture until I watched several analysis videos. Suddenly, all the allegories, details, and parallels became much more obvious, and only then did I realize just how brilliant this film actually is. Behind all the cruelty and disturbing imagery lies a surprisingly rich political and psychological allegory. The story follows 3 adult siblings who have spent their entire lives locked inside their parents' house. They're told the outside world is unimaginably dangerous, and their parents have created an entirely false reality for them. Even ordinary words are deliberately given completely different meanings to make sure the children never question the world they've been taught to believe in. For example, the title, Dogtooth, comes from one of the father's lies. He tells his children they'll only be allowed to leave the house once one of their dog teeth falls out naturally, a day that, of course, will never come. Throughout the film, we're shown their completely distorted view of reality and the constant manipulation they face from their parents. At times, Dogtooth becomes genuinely disturbing and contains several scenes that may shock unprepared viewers, so consider this a small warning. Now, let's talk about the real meaning of the film, something I think many viewers miss, seeing Dogtooth simply as a disturbing story about toxic family relationships. Small spoilers are possible, and if you want to see and analyze this movie on your own, please scroll to number 3. So, the family can actually be seen as a miniature authoritarian state. The parents don't control their children only by keeping them behind a fence. They control language, information, education, sexuality, and even their understanding of the outside world. Words are deliberately given false meanings. Television shows nothing except recordings of the family itself. Everything beyond the fence is presented as dangerous and hostile. Even a harmless cat becomes a terrifying enemy that must be killed. And whenever something goes wrong inside the family, the outside world becomes an easy target to blame. All of this is supposedly done for the children's own protection, just like governments do everything to protect their citizens. Isn't that right? The result is 3 adults who are completely unprepared for real life. Or, in the broader allegory, citizens who are completely controlled by a government they never elected. Their natural desires don't disappear. Without freedom or healthy ways to express them, those desires simply become distorted. That's why the VHS tapes are so important. When the eldest daughter secretly watches movies from the outside world, it's like an information bomb entering a completely closed society. For the first time, she discovers that another reality exists, and from that moment, the reality created by her parents begins to collapse. This movie illustrates Orwell's 1984, or the harsh reality of some countries in our modern world, or perhaps, to some extent, all of them. The methods of manipulating people's perception shown in this film should feel familiar, whether you live in a prosperous democracy or one of the most isolated countries on Earth. This film absolutely deserves an entire 20-minute video just to fully unpack everything that's going on. If you've seen Dogtooth, let me know what you think about it in the comments. I know the ending divided a lot of people, so I'd love to hear your interpretation. But for now, let's move on to our top 3. Number 3. A Serbian Film, 2010. You probably think I've completely lost my mind for putting this movie at number 3. And honestly, after watching this many disturbing films, I've probably lost the last bit of my sanity. But I'll do my best to explain why this controversial movie deserves the number 3 spot on today's list. A Serbian film actually raises far more questions than most people realize. Many dismiss it as nothing more than shock value, or even a disguised snuff film. However, to truly understand why this movie exists, you first have to understand the circumstances in which it was made and the reasons behind its creation. Before we continue, one thing needs to be made clear. This is not a film I'd recommend to anyone. If you're simply curious about what happens in it, checking out the older review on this channel is probably a much better idea, as it covers the complete story, symbolism, and historical context behind the film. So, what is a Serbian film actually about? The story follows Miloš, a retired adult movie actor, struggling to support his wife and young son. Desperate for money, he accepts an offer to star in one final project, promised to be an artistic film unlike anything ever made. The catch is that he's given almost no information about the script or what he'll actually be filming. As production begins, it quickly becomes clear that Miloš has walked into something far more disturbing than he could have ever imagined. He's forced to do unspeakable things that I can't even briefly describe on YouTube. The ending is even more shocking and has led many people to call it the most disgusting film they've ever seen. And honestly, it's hard to argue with that. Now, let's talk about hidden meaning behind the film. The director of a Serbian film, Srđan Spasojević, was born in Belgrade in 1976 and grew up during the violent breakup of Yugoslavia, witnessing both war and heavy state propaganda firsthand. By the time he entered the film industry, he had become deeply frustrated with what he saw as a film culture that was either politically convenient or completely harmless. He believed cinema should provoke thought, disturb its audience, and challenge those in power, not simply entertain people or serve as another tool of propaganda. Spasojević was also deeply critical of the kind of Serbian and Eastern European cinema that receives support from state institutions and European film funds. In his view, there was an almost predictable formula: the Balkan Wars and their aftermath. Victims, suffering, social drama, perhaps a little romance, all packaged into something suitable for European Film Festival. He felt that this was the image of Serbia and Eastern Europe that the international film industry wanted to see, and filmmakers were encouraged to keep reproducing it. His response to this entire system was a film appropriately titled A Serbian Film. Spasojević wanted it to be a grotesque portrait of Serbia and of a generation shaped by war, nationalism, propaganda, political violence, and the social consequences that followed. The goal was to create something so provocative and uncompromising that it would remind people that cinema didn't have to exist simply to satisfy government institutions, funding bodies, or the expectations of the festival circuit. The characters themselves also reflect these ideas. Miloš represents an ordinary person who believes he's free, but gradually loses control over every aspect of his life. At first, he willingly accepts the job because he needs money to support his family. But once he's inside the system, information is hidden from him. He's manipulated, drugged, and eventually loses control even over his own body. Vukmir, meanwhile, represents the system itself. Powerful, exploitative, and interested in Miloš only as long as he can be useful. But there's another interesting way to look at him. As a director and producer, Vukmir is obsessed with creating something brutally honest and uncompromising, something he considers true art, regardless of how disturbing it becomes. In that sense, he can almost be seen as a twisted reflection of Spasojević himself and his own desire to create a film extreme enough to challenge everything around it. Of course, this isn't the only interpretation of a Serbian film, and many people also believe that no amount of symbolism can justify what the film actually shows, and that's a completely understandable position. Anyway, hopefully this gives you at least some idea of what lies beneath all the brutality. For a much deeper breakdown, you can check out the full review of the film on this channel. And if you have something to add, think I've completely lost my mind, or see an entirely different meaning behind the film, definitely let me know in the comments.
Now I could say that the film was soft, so maybe the humankind deserve worse. So.
Number 2. The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, 1989. Can food become a weapon? Can eating become a symbol of power? And what happens when greed consumes absolutely everything? Directed by Peter Greenaway, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover is one of the most visually stunning and deeply disturbing films ever made. Every frame looks like a Renaissance painting, yet what unfolds inside those beautiful images is often disgusting, cruel, and profoundly unsettling. In many ways, this film feels like a much darker and more mature version of A Clockwork Orange. The story follows Albert Spica, a ruthless gangster who spends nearly every evening dining at the same luxurious restaurant he effectively owns. He humiliates everyone around him, his staff, his wife, and anyone unfortunate enough to cross his path. Tired of living in constant fear, his wife Georgina begins a secret affair with a quiet, educated man who offers her something she's been denied for years: kindness and real love. This film builds toward one of the most unforgettable finales in cinema. On the surface, it's a story about infidelity and revenge. But beneath that lies a much larger political and social allegory. One of the most popular interpretations is that the four main characters represent different parts of society. Albert Spica isn't just a violent gangster. He represents corrupt political power driven by greed and excess. He's a thief because everything he has was taken from someone else. He's vulgar and completely tasteless, constantly pretending to understand culture, food, art, and the world around him, while in reality he understands almost nothing except violence. The only thing he's truly good at is brutally suppressing the will of everyone around him. Georgina symbolizes ordinary people trapped under that power, while her lover represents culture, literature, and the intellectual class. Richard, the cook, can be seen as the working class, quietly observing everything until the moment he can no longer remain neutral. The restaurant itself becomes a miniature society where political power, culture, and ordinary people are all forced to coexist under the rule of a single tyrant. Even food becomes more than food. It turns into a symbol of power, control, greed, and consumption. This isn't just one of the most disturbing films ever made, it's also one of the smartest political allegories in cinema. The film is shot almost like a theatrical production, with every frame carefully composed, and visually, it's incredibly powerful. The performances are excellent, and I can guarantee you one thing. If you watch this film, you'll never forget what you've seen. I'm not sure everyone will like it, but you definitely won't forget it. A well-deserved number 2. Number 1, Synecdoche, New York, 2008. And finally, we've reached number 1. I'm sure many of you will find this choice very unusual, but I genuinely believe this film, despite its PG-13 rating, is more terrifying than most horror movies these days and leaves you with more to think about than many disturbing films ever could. On a personal level, it left a lasting impression. In fact, I ended up watching it twice just to fully understand what was actually happening. And both times it left me feeling strangely depressed for a while. The story follows Caden Cotard, a theater director whose life slowly begins to fall apart. He suffers from mysterious health problems, grows increasingly distant from his wife Adele, and eventually watches his marriage completely collapse. Shortly afterward, he's given what seems like the opportunity of a lifetime: unlimited funding to create the greatest theatrical production ever staged. Determined to capture every detail of real life, Caden begins constructing a massive replica of New York inside a warehouse. He hires actors to play the people around him, then actors to play those actors, and eventually, even actors to play himself. As the project grows larger and more obsessive, the line between reality and performance slowly disappears. Synecdoche, New York isn't really about theater at all. It's about time, regret, mortality, loneliness, and the terrifying realization that no matter how much time we think we have, life always moves faster than we expect. Try to live your life in such a way that when you're old and standing at death's door, you won't look back thinking, I could have done better. My life could have been different. I gave up too early. I never became the person I wanted to be. Everyone takes something different away from this film, and that's exactly why it's so special. Some people see it as a meditation on death. Others see it as a story about depression, the fear of failure, or the impossible desire to create something perfect before it's too late. And for some people, that'll probably feel like nothing more than a collection of random, disconnected scenes that make no sense at all. But remember, Philip Seymour Hoffman didn't star in bad movies. He was genuinely one of the greatest actors this world has ever seen. If there's one movie from today's list that's worth watching at least once in your lifetime, it's this one. Just don't be surprised if you end up questioning your entire life afterward. Well, you're probably wondering, where the hell have you been for almost a month? I don't really have an excuse, but I was sick and ended up spending some time in the hospital. Everything is fine now though, and I'm ready to get back to making videos, hopefully more often than before. For now, the goal is to return to at least one video a week, and we'll see where things go from there. If you'd like to see more content more often, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, let me know what you think about the movies on today's list and about this format in general. Would you prefer more spoilers and deeper explanations, or as few spoilers as possible? Any feedback is incredibly valuable to me, and believe me, your kind words, as well as constructive criticism, are some of the biggest things that keep this channel moving forward. And if, by some miracle, you feel like supporting the channel financially, you can do so through Super Thanks. I'll make sure to mention everyone who supports the channel in future videos. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Share your favorite disturbing movies with interesting themes or deeper meanings in the comments below. Take care of yourselves, and whether you spend the rest of your day doing something productive or simply getting some well-deserved rest, make sure you always have enough energy left to create something new. You've been watching Top 2 Day, and I'll see you in the next one.